Alright, welcome to my channel. I'm Matt. I mostly play in my group Mobius Trio with two other amazing guitarists. And this is my YouTube channel, and this new thing that I'm trying to do right now is a weekly vlog about my progress with this crazy beast of a thing that I just got. So let me sort of put it in front of you a little bit and we can talk about it. This is the new guitar I had built by the luthier Benz Tschannen, who's a Swiss luthier based in Nevada. As you can see, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 strings. And it's really unusual for an 8-string guitar in that it's got the 6 strings of a standard 6-string guitar in a weird tuning right now. I'll explain that later. But it's got those 6 strings in the middle with a low string that's normally tuned to A and a high string which right now is also tuned to A. And this configuration of strings on a guitar was started by this guitarist Paul Galbraith, working with the luthier Rubio in England. And they sort of invented this idea of an extended range guitar both above and below the normal range of a 6-string guitar. Normally extended range guitars go lower. And Galbraith and Rubio are famous for another of other innovations to classical guitars, including something that's more noticeable on his guitars than on this, and I'll explain why, which is the multi-scale aspect of the guitar, meaning that the scale, or the length of the string of the high strings is shorter than the length of the strings of the low strings. And so you can see that that makes the bridge tilted and the nut tilted and the frets fanned. Now, that's really subtle on this guitar, and the reason for that, and kind of the innovation that Benz and I tried to bring to this guitar, was doing a 2-fret extension on the low end here. And that's something that there is on a number of 7-string guitars, including those played by Mason Fish, who's in my group Mobius Trio, or our group I should say, and John Dearman of the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet, and others. And I really liked the way the low strings on those guitars sounded, and I thought they sounded bigger and meatier than the low strings of a really fanned Brahms guitar. So that's why I had Benz build this guitar this way. And one thing I'm curious about, if people want to talk about it in the comments, is this still a Brahms guitar, since it's really different in that regard? It's still the same string configuration and a similar tuning, but it functions a little bit differently because of the 2-fret extension, and also because I'm not playing it with a resonating box and an end pin and things like that that Galbraith is famous for. So I'm really curious. I think I'll still call it a Brahms guitar, but if it's different enough, I'll have to come up with a new name for it. So before I show off what this guitar can do, not that I've learned how to do everything it can do yet, because this is week 1 of the vlog. I've only had this guitar for a week. I picked it up from the luthier's house in Nevada. I drove 10 hours last Thursday to do that because I was so excited about getting this guitar, and I can kind of show off some of the unusual features, but I wanted to talk about my plans for it. And right now, how those plans are in the works. So, my main plan for it, my main job at this point as a guitarist, is playing with Mobius Trio. So because of the fact that this guitar contains all 6 strings that I've learned to play on my whole life, as well as more, I plan on playing my Mobius Trio rep on this guitar. And I've actually been working on a giant new arranging project, a guitar concerto reduced for 3 guitars. And I've been planning out my part with this guitar in mind to take advantage of the extended range. So yeah, that's a huge part of my plans, but I'm also really excited to do some arranging work for it. The way that Paul Galbraith, the guy who sort of invented this guitar, is really famous for arranging keyboard music for it, but also arranging pop tunes and things like that. I've got some grand plans to write some etudes for it, because I'm going to have to learn all the differences about playing this, and there are many. And so a set of etudes to teach myself and hopefully to teach other people if they're also interested in learning this instrument. And what else do I have planned? Just a lot of stuff. Writing music for it, having other people write music for it as well. So that's a big part of my plan, and I definitely want to work with some composers to take advantage of kind of like the cool possibilities for, that's a little bit out of tune, but the sort of guitaristic things you can do on this that will sound really, really unusual. So I'm very, very excited for that, but first I have to learn to play this thing. So getting to talk about learning to play this thing, so for guitarists, they might immediately understand why this thing would be so weird to play, but for non-guitarists, I can kind of sum up the issues, the biggest issues, there are many, but the biggest issues for learning to play this in really two, one right-hand issue and one left-hand issue. So the right-hand issue is that just about every classical guitarist, when they're playing a lot of their repertoire, there's a kind of default position that we're not always in, but that always allows us to kind of find our way back to places. And that position is very commonly to rest our index, middle, and ring fingers, or I, M, and A fingers on the G, B, and E strings. And again, this is in weird tuning right now. I'll explain that later in the video. But so we rest our three fingers there, and then our thumb gets to kind of travel all over the place. And when you switch to 7-string guitar, it really messes with you for the left hand, reason that I'll explain in a minute. But the right hand is not so bad because you're just adding another bass string, but you can still have your fingers live on that kind of treble land. So the difficulty on the right hand here is that we add a new treble string. So there's no longer that like 3 fingers, 3 strings thing. And since just about no classical guitarists play with their pinky, we can't do like there are 4 and 4 fingers thing unless I want to learn also to play with my pinky. Maybe one thing at a time. So it really takes a lot of getting used to that extra string. So I've been doing a lot of like sight reading and stuff for that, playing arpeggios, kind of getting used to playing different things. The left-hand issue is that we've added another string, and so much of a guitarist's mental life is remembering that, we have fourths as the distance between most of our strings, but there's one string pair where the difference is a third. Again, this thing's out of tune, it's in weird tuning, we'll explain in a minute. But the third, because there's an additional string up here, the third has moved to a different spot between different strings as you're kind of feeling in there. And it really messes with you. If I ever try to go, I just kind of like miss where I'm supposed to go on that third string down, because that's normally where I'm traversing a third instead of a fourth between strings. So that really messes with one's mind. So those are to practice those two things. For the right hand, I've been practicing arpeggios and things like that. And for both hands, I've been learning kind of new scale shapes that aren't going to work in this weird tuning, but like 3-octave major scales in one position, things like that. So going from like, actually I guess it kind of will work. From those notes in one scale position, one position. So those are a lot of what I've been doing to work on the unique challenges posed by this guitar. Another thing I've been working on is figuring out how to sit with this thing. So while I'm explaining this, I'm sitting with a strap, which is really unusual. Normally, I would stand and play with a strap. But I'm just sitting to kind of record this video. And the reason I started standing with a strap at all is I got a back injury last year, and my recovery has involved sitting as little as possible. And it's been a really difficult transition, but I'm hopeful that as my back recovers, I can return to sitting and just taking breaks and stuff. So because of that, I've also been trying to figure out a couple seated positions with this guitar, and I'll sort of put in some clips here of me sitting the way I normally sit with a 6-string, with a footstool and a dinette cushion, with the guitar rather vertically, and then going full vertical, the way Galbraith plays, with basically an end pin sitting in shallow position, which I'll also drop in a clip of. And also, with this guitar, I've been having a few issues, which as kind of an experimental project and build between the luthier and myself, it makes sense that there would be some things that we kind of have to figure out. The primary one, and the reason this guitar is in a bizarre tuning right now, is because the high A string is really, really difficult, and you can hear that's not an A right now, really difficult to get to sound with a normal timbre. You can hear it's maybe a little bit twangy and almost, I think, kind of banjo-y right now compared to the other treble strings. It still sounds cool, it's still very cool to have, but I've been working on if there are ways that I can utilize different strings, or in this case maybe different tunings, to kind of help with that. So the issue seems to be that this scale length, which is 632.5 millimeters, is pretty long for just about any treble nylon string that string makers make. And so when I first was putting strings on, I was putting these very, very thin rectified nylon strings on, and they just had this very thin, twangy sound. I even had one pop and cut me. And clearly that was a lot of tension, probably a bad string, but still, I was like, what's going on here? So one thing I've tried in the last couple days, again, I've only had this guitar for really a week, and one thing I've tried in the last couple days to work on that is using different types of strings on the high string, seeing if I can use a normal tension or low tension E string like this and just tune it up higher. And now I don't trust that I could tune it up a full fourth higher, so I tried tuning it up to G before with a normal tension string, and that worked pretty well. I don't have that on right now, but that had a pretty nice timbre. And now this is my second experiment where I've put on a low tension, also rectified nylon, just because that was the only option at the store for low tension, E string, and I've tuned it up about to G sharp. I'm sorry if anybody's got perfect pitch. I know it's not exact right now. I just sort of like threw strings on the guitar and I've been playing around trying to make it work. So this is better. You can hear it's still stretching out, and it'll be stretching out. So I'm hoping that I can find a string that's thick enough and can be set at the right tension to get a rounder, fuller sound, a little bit more like we have on there, on the E string. That's my goal. Because if that's not the case, I'm not really sure what else we'd have to do, because I think it has to do with the scale length of the string. And I know, for instance, Paul Galbraith's guitars are more radically multi-scale, more radically fanned, and so they have a shorter scale length for this string. That would be a really tough change to make at this late date. So hopefully I'm able to find a solution that just involves strings and gets me the sound that I want. Actually, I sent an email to Mr. Galbraith, and he got back. He didn't answer my questions yet, he was busy, but he seems like a really, really nice guy. So I'm hopeful that he should have some good tips for me. So that's been my first week with this guitar. Please, you can follow me on Instagram also, where I post videos much more regularly of just practice videos and stuff. That's at MobiusMatt on Instagram. I'll make sure I have a link to that under this video. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll try to post another video next Friday with more progress with this guitar. Hopefully I've fixed some of these problems and can just show you other problems I figured out along the way.